Oh, happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to my show, where it really is okay to not be okay. I'm Rae Bonney, a qualified counsellor, workplace mental health specialist, and not to mention a very dedicated and oftentimes enthusiastically disruptive men's issues advocate. It's not every girl's dream job, but hey, remember, men also matter. Steaming ahead in 2019 and my second show for the year, what does it feel like being you today? If you've caught up with the press, of course, I'm now presenting every second Sunday of the month between 10:30 until 12 noon. And guests from all over the world will join the show sharing what it feels like being them and also recognising again that it really is okay to not be okay. Now, there you go. It is Sunday, the 10th of February, and I would like to do a little special shout out. It is my son's birthday. His name is George, and he turns 21 today. So, George, you are definitely the tunes in my head and the fire in my ribs, not to mention the voice in my heart. I almost started crying then, on air crying, and it's only 3 minutes into the show. Happy birthday, George. We just heard from John Farmer, our station manager. He was filling in for Nina Nicolado this morning, who helps support our fabulous community radio station here at 3WBC with her iconic Italian show, which is heard every week. And I understand that you're taking care of a loved one, so good luck with that today, Nina, if you're listening in. Now, we all know here at 3WBC, the power of community, love and connection keeps us all together. And these very simple gestures can impact incredibly strongly on the simplest of moments. Now, today, it's all about loving me, loving you, being loved and loving. In fact, I could share the love forever, but instead I'm going to go one step further. So if it's a big warm hug you love on a Sunday morning, how about a dose of the world's greatest metaphoric cuddle, Lance Piccione? He's the CEO and founder of Love Me, Love You Foundation, and you may remember he played AFL for around 8 years for clubs including Hawthorn, North and Adelaide, and like many, he experienced what he thought was a dream career, but behind closed doors lived with pretty serious mental health challenges. And these days, Lance, he connects with the community through his non-profit organisation, Love Me, Love You, striving to empower and build personal resilience, helping challenge the cruel stigma and critical, which is often connected with mental health issues. So, without further ado, I'd like to say, welcome to the show, Lance.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, Rae.
And we did have a little bit of a crescendo there for you, which I'd prepared earlier, but that's not going to happen. We'll save that for later in the show.
Lovely.
What does it feel like being you today?
Feels good to be me today.
Yes.
You know, I've had a good start to the year. My life is forever challenging and evolving, but you know, being a father now to two young boys, got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and you know, I get to wake up and do what I do every day and love who I do it with. So, what does it feel like to be me? It feels pretty good these days. Not always the story though.
No, and we're going to get to that later in the show, because I think it's really important, and this is what this show is all about, being okay to not be okay. But quite often we find that people have that standard go-to, yeah, good, yeah, fine, all good, yeah, everything's great, when in fact it's not.
Yeah, we've become really so good at the old throwaway, isn't it? You know, interpretation, and we've even sort of used the how you going as a throwaway greeting, as opposed to the actual question that people are asking. So
that's right. And I remember the first time I met you. Can't even remember how we met. I think you were stalking me for a while.
Must have been, most definitely. No, I think I got connected through to you from one of my great mates, Warren Davies.
That's right, the Unbreakable Farmer.
Unbreakable Farmer. And I thought, well, you know, a lady that's doing some amazing things in the men's world, and I thought, well, let's reach out. And it's the first time I've been called that today. Is that right?
In a long time.
So I thought, well, reach out, because it's all about
Yes.
creating new experiences with new people. That's what we're about. So.
Well, you've mentioned Warren, and Warren has been on the show before. He came
Yep.
here with his beautiful daughter,
Yep.
and that was a while back now, but he's got a fantastic story and advocacy around being the unbreakable farmer, really advocating for the mental health of people out there on the land. So
Yep.
I know he's listening in this morning. So, Warren, thank you
Warren.
for the great work that you do, not only in the rural area and around, but also he's connected to your organisation.
Yeah,
as well.
he is. Yeah. He's I come across Warren through another mutual connection sort of thing. It's all about sort of using those connections, isn't it? It's,
You're a user.
Yeah, no, I'm an engager. We'll say not a user, I'm an engager. So, I really love how Warren goes about it, and he does some amazing things for us. It's a forever challenging game. Same thing, getting sort of Warren out there to, connect to the people on the
Yes.
land. We, I like to call him the country Lance. I do more the metro. He does the more the country. So
really?
But no, he's an amazing man, and he's been really good for us as a foundation.
Yes, and I think people bandy around a word these days which is humble, and we're humbled. But Warren, I think, is one of the true people that does demonstrate what humble is.
Oh, a true definition of humility. That's how he goes about it, and I think that's why people really connect to him as a man.
As a man, not as a woman. Or, these days.
I think on Tuesdays, who knows?
We can't be gender specific these days, can we? But that's a whole nother show. But when we did eventually catch up, it was on the fly, and we met at the very snazzy Taronga Village shopping centre.
Yes.
And
you were late.
No, it wasn't. It was my second.
But we won't bring it up.
Did I mention that my watch battery must have broken on that day as well? But I remember sitting down with you, and it wasn't long into the conversation that you disclosed something to me that was really, really surprising. And that's when I thought, this guy is the real deal. And you said to me, Rae, I was really nervous about meeting you today. And it's me. And then you talked about how nervous you become when you meet new people, and in those kinds of settings that you get really actually quite overwhelmed. And of course, if you look up Lance Piccione on the Googles, you will see this very Aussie AFL footballer stereotype that you would expect the absolute opposite.
Yeah, that's the perception, isn't it?
So it wasn't just
the perception that people have.
It wasn't just me, was it?
No, not just you. I as acclaimed as you are as a person in this world, I am. I get nervous of a lot of sort of social connections and going to anything new or meeting people new. It's always a sort of bit of an overwhelming experience for me. In the lead up, I get there, sort of the drive out there is a bit like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And but then I'm getting in there and start chatting and having those conversations, and it makes me feel a bit more at ease. And like even this morning coming here, even though I've got a good head for radio, just having these conversations and not knowing what the results are going to be. I like to sort of be in control with what's going on, but allowing myself to let go of that control.
Especially on my show where there's very little control. Yeah. But thanks to, I've just segued there because I've just looked to my right to see our amazing producer, Anthony Roberto, who donates his time to come here and help produce my show and keeps it on track. So we do have a certain amount of control, but big shout out to Anthony because he does donate his time and his insights and efforts and evolving technical expertise, keeping us on track. Nice. But back to that, what did it feel like? Can you describe the feeling driving over here this morning?
Driving here this morning, especially on a Sunday, like I really sort of try to concentrate that time on my family, and the thing that grounds me the most is being around my kids, and as there's more of the being away from the boys and my wife this morning. It's a bit like, I need to get back sort of thing. But I at the same time I have a very understanding and appreciative wife that says, you got to do what you got to do, and you're all doing it for the right reasons, and that sort of gives me the confidence to make sure that I feel good when I'm getting here. It took me an hour to get here I'm out at Airport West, so it was, a bit of a drive, walking through the traffic, and even on a Sunday morning. But, as I said, it's, just overwhelming experience. You still, as much as I do this and share and connect, it doesn't get easier. I just get better at managing it. Makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, so for me, it's just like the same. I get the same experience and same sort of butterflies in the stomach and same sort of those sort of gut feelings. But then, that I'm here, and then Anthony met me in the car park, which was nice today, and then I'm at ease, so I'm all good now.
Yeah, and is this been a feeling that you've had since you were young?
I think my experiences weren't sort of great at school. So talk about that sort of connection into sort of a social. I'm actually really socially awkward in the initial stages until I warm into sort of things, and that sort of come from school days, and I sort of bring that around back to belonging. That's sort of my experiences back then didn't make me feel like I belonged, so I wasn't really connected into how I was to be me. So I have that sort of constant self-doubt that comes from just my everyday. But I embrace it now, and the more I can feel that sense of belonging, the more comfortable I get into a situation.
And with the foundation, Love Me, Love You, you get around to as many people as you can, especially the younger generations. Is that right, to talk to them about your experiences?
Yeah. Our core demographic that we target is that sort of young adult to youth range. And the more we can do in sort of the next generation coming through, help them understand the different challenges. And, and we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making sure that it's the message is being delivered on more simple sort of landing sort of thing for people, for them to understand, because the issue that we're having is that there's so many opportunities, and there's so many people delivering different resources and information that it's actually creating confusion. And this is what we're helping people understand, is we're trying to help make the complex simple. And how they engage in those certain behaviours, and accountability to those behaviours where they're going through sort of from social, to family experiences, at the sports club, at school, wherever they are, how to create that sort of simple framework for them to engage in. And it's all based on my lived experience, and and what I did at the start, and what I do during it, and then what I do now. So
nothing more powerful than storytelling. And you don't need a degree or a qualification to be able to tell a story and for that to resonate with others. And I think when you were speaking about many other organisations that are trying to be experts in the mental health space, when mental health relating to an individual, it's undefinable. So how can you create something really, I guess, tangible to relate to every single person?
Yeah.
But coming from the reverse, when you're telling a story, well, then people can relate. Even when you were talking about what it's like at school and not fitting in, I reckon most of the boys that come to my counselling room can relate to that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think for me, it's about understanding the connection that you make through sharing a story, and allowing yourself to not think that your story is actually any more important than anybody else's, and then allow them to engage in how they look and share their story. I was at an event last night, I had to speak at. There was a fundraiser we had, and from sharing my story at the very start of the event, I had about 8 people come up to me afterwards, and share their story. And as I said to them, they're like, "Oh, mine doesn't sound as bad as what you went through," blah blah. But it's not about the level of. It's just the fact that your story is the most important thing to you, and that's what it matters. How you share that is up to you. I just have a platform to be able to share it more and more to different people. And I've become so sort of I've become really, really comfortable with what my story is. It's not sort of shying away from that ability, the insecurities that come with sharing a story that a lot of people have, and that's what sort of holds them back from being able to engage in it. And, the more you shy away from it, as we know, actually the worse it gets. In those little sort of mountain out of molehill sort of style, that you just go, okay, well, but understand that it's, for me, this is my story, and these are the things that I do for me. And if you don't like how I go about it, I'm fine with it.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, you can't be, I guess people say precious about it, but, I also tell my story very publicly, very, very regularly. And what I love about the story is that every day there's a new addition to it, because every day you're experiencing something new and adding to that whole repertoire of a story. And I love nothing more than a microphone and a stage, and very rarely have to deal with the butterflies. It's more like, get me off, please. But now that we're sort of skirting around the edges of Love Me, Love You, can you just, before we do go to our first break this morning, just go back to the evolution of Love Me, Love You and just talk about how that started and where it is now?
How we started. It started after I living with a mental illness for so long in my life, and substance abuse was a big part of my life, and nearly suicided 7 years ago now, just over 7 years ago, and that sort of was what come to Love Me, Love You. I nearly lost my leg from complications from an operation that I had on my knee 7 years ago, just before I was nearly suicided. And I thought, well, actually, there's more to my life and what I can do. And I was at absolute rock bottom, and I thought, okay, well, I gathered my people, my crew. We talk about gathering your crew a lot, and I gathered my crew together, and I said, okay, well, I actually want to do something about what this challenge of my life has been. And now it's become what Love Me, Love You is.
So what was the first step, given that you were almost missing a leg and probably very difficult to take a step?
For me, it was that soul searching, actually really then coming to understanding of who I was.
But how do you just start a foundation? How do you just go, like, did you said you got your crew together. Who was your crew?
Crew was a guy called Luke Livingston, who's a good mate of mine, Matt Pilios, my mum, and a couple other guys that was just sort of go, okay, well, this is what I want to do. And it was just going to be...
What's it?
What's it? Everything now. it's evolved.
Our audience are going, please tell me.
It's evolved so much. So we as an organisation now go into schools, sports clubs, community groups.
But back then, what was it? What was the first thing? Did you pull out a pad of paper and write a concept down, or?
Oh, it was a lot of pieces of paper. What can I do? How can I go about it? I had the idea that I was actually just going to do a big awareness walk. That was going to be it, and I was going to do that every year. That was a walk from Sydney to Melbourne.
You did that?
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
It was in 2014.
2014, so coming up 5 years ago.
Yep.
And that was going to be, and I was going to raise money for a mental health organisation, and we're going to do some amazing things and create these conversations, and thousands of people are going to do it every year, and then reality set in that not everyone wanted to come for a walk from Sydney to Melbourne, which is all good, but that's okay. How rude.
Who wouldn't walk from Melbourne to Sydney or Sydney to Melbourne?
Yeah. So, but that was what it was. But the whole reason around why we do the walk is, for me, that became my medicine.
Yes.
Sort of that becomes sort of my way of getting through my day, and then it still to a point now is, but I can't sort of go for as far. I can only sort of go 10, 15 minutes these days because of my knee, which is...
Yes, I remember suggesting to you for one of our meetings that I said, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, no, I can't do that.
No, I can't do that. There's a few complications that have come from my last operation that have caused some issues.
We are going to talk about this later in the show when we do delve into more about how people can become involved in Love Me, Love You, and the march that's coming up in March.
Yes.
Oh,
marketing guru that I am.
Gee, that penny just dropped then.
Yep.
Takes me a while sometimes. So do you participate in that then?
Do I know? No, this last year was the first time I haven't. So, which is it was a real sort of empty feeling that I had, but it was sort of an unbelievable feeling as well, because we had 700 people participate in the walk last year, but not actually taking step by step with the people that are doing it.
We just drive along in a van with a megaphone going, come on,
move it. So it was, but for this, so we did the Sydney to Melbourne, then we did around the Bay, and then we did the Port City to Port Melbourne for a couple of years in a row, and then we sort of brought it back to a more achievable and a more accessible, but more still the same challenging for people to be able to participate in.
Fantastic. Well, that's just one of the elements of...
One little element.
And somebody's just texted in saying, Ray, I still can't understand what Love Me, Love You is all about.
Okay.
He's not getting to the point.
Okay. So we're a mental health awareness organisation that goes into organisations to deliver awareness, education and wellbeing programs.
What qualifies you to do that?
Me, my lived experience, but the people around me who qualifies what we do.
Okay.
So we have renowned psychologists that sort of help deliver the education programs or design the material that we deliver. We collaborate with what we call the Love Me, Love You collective. So they're industry leaders in psychology, child psychs, neuropsychologists. We've got dietitians, we've got exercise science, high performance mindset people, meditation, mindfulness, which create the content and up-to-date skills and resources for us to be able to deliver.
So
that's what we do.
Yeah. And that's painting a picture now, because you can see this whole integrated approach. When you're mentioning dietitians and psychologists and neuro people, that's embracing the human condition rather than just, say, approaching mental health. And I think that a point you made before about how much conflation and confusion there is around, air quotes here, mental health, it can become just so confusing for people, and everybody wants a patch of it to be an expert. Whereas when you've got this whole collaboration approach, I guess it's easier for people to choose an option or choose what they can take away from it that might send them on a journey.
Most definitely. So as I said, what am I an expert in? I'm an expert in telling my story and connecting people to the organisation to, as I said, to give them the tools and the resources to understand where they're at and what they're doing and how to go about it. And then we also have collaborations with certain partners that through a national referral network. So we don't do the sort of counselling psych services in-house, but we have people all over the country that we sort of connect people into, and then we just help them understand the approach to get to those people that they need to talk to, depending, no matter where they are in the country. Yes.
So how many people do you think, this sounds really inappropriate, but how many people do you think you've touched?
It's a little bit inappropriate there, Ray, for a Sunday morning.
For any morning, really.
Especially with my wife listening.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Em. I couldn't tell you. In terms of face-to-face...
Don't you collect data and analyse it?
Yeah. So it's the difference between our face-to-face experiences through our programs and our workshops. Over the 5 years, we've gone over 50,000 people. So keynote sort of things that I've done, anything, social media reaches, the whole thing. It's hard to sort of gather that information on the exact numbers on the far reach that we get. Even from, we did a campaign last year for Suicide Prevention Day, a video called Left Behind.
Yes.
And that had like 500,000 reach. So how do we measure those numbers and who we've touched? But we know that people that we've helped into actual professional health services or people that have contacted us, it's in the thousands, definitely.
Yes. If it's one, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's what I would say on my watch. If it's one in all of my years of doing this, that's enough.
Yeah, it is. But we have that feeling of accomplishment that we've been able to impact at least one person's life. But it's every day.
Well, yes, the assumption is that it will be more than that. But I guess it's more metaphor to say that every single life
definitely
is important.
Most definitely.
And should be cherished. Now, we're going to go to a break in a moment, Lance, and come back, and we're going to dive head first into your story.
Wow.
I'm going to, as the superb host that I am, allow you to tell your story without too much interruption, because it's a great story. I will have some questions though. So every time I have a question, now this is the first time I'm doing this on my show, but I've got a gesture that I'm going to use for you to know that I want to ask your question. And it's this.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I get that.
So you understand what nobody can see what that gesture is, but Lance knows what it is, and I've made it especially for him. So every time I do this, that's when I want to ask you. I've had that gesture
a few times in my life, so I'm sure I'm comfortable with it.
Now, I did a lot of research. No, I didn't have to do a lot of research on you, because I know you very well, and I must say that in the time that we've known each other, I've really come to love you, and I think we've become pretty good friends. We've shared a lot. In the mornings that we meet, it's always, what does it feel like being you, Rae? Because not many people actually ask me. And it's usually at a time when I really do need to talk to somebody, and you listen. You don't give me advice.
No, not need to
you
give
listen,
you advice.
and then you always go, get into these arms, and then you hug me. And he's got some pretty impressive arms, and obviously works out at the gym, so it's a significant one. So I want to try this out and see if this is for you. There's that. And also, I found this. Ready? You got to listen closely, people.
The free kick is advantage paid. I think it will be. Picioane's kicked a goal.
Picioane's kicked a goal. And he certainly kicked more goals than we could ever imagine in the last few years of his life. So we are going to go to a break now, Lance. And I have a Tom Walker song. And I'd like you to tell me a little bit about why this is so important to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. Oh, sorry, I didn't give you the gesture.
Yeah,
Did I? There you go.
Yeah. So I think the Leave the Light On song, it's just when you listen to the words and understanding of what it is, it's actually just sort of saying, okay, I'm here for you. We're all going through some challenges, we're all going through some stuff, and make sure that, just allow yourself to be open to the fact that you need some support. And me, it sort of, I play it a lot. It sort of brings me back to the reason why I do what I do.
Well, there you go. Here it is again for you. It's Tom Walker, Leave the Light On. You are listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC, and you're with Rae Bonney, guest Lance Piccione. Don't go away. There you go. That's a bit of Tom Walker and Leave the Light On. That's a really nice song, Lance.
Yeah, the first time I heard it, I was driving along in the car, and I was actually on the way home from a presentation one night, and I was like, this got me. So I got it in there, and now it's part of my playlist and get to go every day.
Well, the power of storytelling and the power of storytelling through music, it's unbeatable. But welcome back, everyone. The time is just 1 minute past 11 and you're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC with Rae Bonney, joined by CEO and founder of Love Me, Love You Foundation, Lance Piccione. You also may remember him running around the footy field during his AFL career, where he played with Adelaide, played for... didn't play with them. Adelaide, Hawthorn and the Kangas between about 1998 and 2005.
Yeah,
Is that right? 1998, that was the year George was born. Happy birthday again, George, 21 today. Now,
there you go.
I always like to build that in.
Makes me feel old, but thanks very much.
Well, you don't look, I shouldn't say that, but you don't look old, but you don't.
Well, I actually look younger now than I did when I was in my 20s. So
you had a bit of hair going on there as well, didn't you?
I was fighting a good fight. I was going thinning out at a very early age. I was very experimenting a lot with the different hairstyles and colours and all that sort of stuff to get myself through. And it was actually a pretty sad story. I was, I remember I was coming up to a night game.
Yeah.
I was at Hawthorn. I was coming up to a night game, and I thought, this is a Friday night game. This is going to be some people watching. And dyed the hair brown, so they sort of stained the melon as opposed to looking through and seeing the sparse forest.
Oh, was that your worst hair disaster?
One of. There's probably a top 10. Yeah, definitely a top 10. But the fact that I had the same hairstyle from my grade prep photo to year 12 was also probably a big hair disaster as well.
Is that attributable to your mum, or did you have your own ideas?
No. My dad was very much, this is a clean cut, this is how you're going to do sort of things. And I had the wavy flat top for a long time in my life, and which is not the coolest look. But it was the look that I was rocking for a long time.
Well, speaking of which, being a young fella and also introducing the idea of, your mum and dad as well and what it was like for you growing up, can you start your story there?
What it was like growing up, it was good. Like I have come from a really, really strong family. The family values that mum and dad instilled into us around connection. We have each other's back, and we still do. But my dad, typical sort of Eastern European sort of hard ass sort of guy that showed tough love, and but. Then what I've come to sort of understand more now is that Dad's tough love was just his way of doing it, and that if he's got your back, there's no other man that you'd rather have right beside you in war, But it was, I had a good life. I got an older brother and an older sister, and sport has always been our thing. I was playing basketball since I was 4 years of age, but I wasn't the same thing. I was an overdeveloped Eastern European kid. I was, I was the size of a 10-year-old when I was 4. I stopped growing when I was 14, I think. So one of those sort of guys, and but life was good. I had a lot of good memories, but I was playing basketball, footy. I was doing the whole thing. It was everything to do with some sort of ball was my go.
If you could reflect back to when you were playing basketball at 4 and performing for people, not only your parents, but, in teams, did you have any feelings then of anxiety or having to...
No, not so much then. No, definitely not. No, not I can remember really anyway. It's a tricky one because it was just love. It was just we're doing things, we're enjoying, we're happy. That was the experiences of what my life was, and it sort of got lost a little bit along the way.
When did things start to change for you?
I think high school days. Primary school.
Can we say puberty on air?
Puberty was we
just did.
It was puberty when I was about 6, so that was but it was more through my primary school days. It was, I got in trouble a fair bit at school, even in primary school.
For anything in particular?
Violence, acting out, and but boredom was my thing at school. At primary school.
Just ask you there, when you talk about violence, I talk a lot in my narrative, with men's issues. We're always talking about violence, or everyone's talking about men and violence. Can you remember where that feeling came from? It wasn't just an innate need to go out and beat people up.
No, it wasn't. No, and people that know me now I've got more love to give than.
So where was that feeling coming from?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I was just an overwhelming experience of just being who I was at that age. Whether that was how I acted out, as I said, because I was much bigger than everybody else, and about emotionally and sort of verbally, I wasn't too advanced in how I was going about it. But I was a kid. Not that was an excuse or anything, but I was a kid.
Well, I was your textbook bully as well in high school, and I talk about it quite publicly that that the source of my pain was coming from somewhere else, and it was channeling through to violence.
Yep.
And but people just see the end result, and we judge people just on that piece of behaviour rather than backtracking to find out where the source of pain is.
Where it's all coming from. Yeah, and we say it's a deflection. It's a defence mechanism. The ones that actually do it are defending their inner self so people can't get close to them or can't see what's really going on. So,
so were you playing footy at school?
No, not at primary school. No, that wasn't my thing. Basketball was my thing. I was playing 3-4 games a weekend. I was involved, and that was, we'd spend pretty much from Friday night to Sunday afternoon at the basketball stadium, and I wasn't playing. My brother was playing, watching him, and because my brother was he was the man. He was the guy that I looked up to. And I still do now in terms of how he goes about his way with his connection to family and his family. He's absolute rock for his wife and his
what's his name?
Lee.
Good on you, Lee.
Yeah, good on you, Lee. And how he goes about it, and he sort of, as I grew older, going into footy, Lee got a little bit overshadowed a little bit because of the profile that I was sort of building in the footy world. But I always say that my brother's always and was a much better footballer than I ever was. It's just about the fact that I was given opportunities to do what I did at an earlier age. Lee came into footy a little bit older. I think he was like 16 or 17 when he started getting into footy. And, but as a footballer, I do say that he was a much better footballer than I was. And
so when did the AFL start having interest in you? What age?
I was 13.
Okay.
I was 13. I started talking to some clubs.
So that was like year 7 at school? Or
year 8? Year 8. Year 8 I was. So it was after just coming up to a state carnival. I was playing under 15 state carnival when I was 13. And, the club started talking and saying, okay, well, can I keep an eye on what's going on? And that sort of...
So how were you managed through that in terms of your parents and the school and your own expectations?
Didn't think of it, I don't think.
I didn't ask you what you thought of it. I said, how were you managed?
Yeah,
So that sounded really rude.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ray. I appreciate that, but I come used to it. I don't think I was managed into it. Yeah. My mum and dad always been supportive. There'll come a lot of pressure from my dad with playing sports, because my dad played soccer for Australia. He was a superstar soccer player, and he knew what it was and how he got there and the hard work that needed to go into it, and the sacrifices that need to be made. So he instilled that into me as a youngster. I appreciated the fact that clubs were talking to me, but playing footy was just, for me, it was just an outlet.
Yes.
It was my thing. I loved training. I loved playing more, clearly. Because not too many people go, oh, I love training. If I could just train all the time, it would be amazing. But the whole sort of physical contact for me with footy was the reason why I played. I took those sort of those experiences from my primary school days that then I was actually able to take that out onto the field and, playing footy, which, there's the feeling of hitting in a legal way,
yes.
On a footy field. That physical contact for me was the thing that sort of allowed me to unleash, the experiences or whatever was going on inside my head.
Some of those very masculine attributes, which are attributes of the male condition.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Which these days we tend to try and deviate or demonise, which is part of the work that I do, is to reverse that stigma. But I guess the picture I'm trying to paint, Lance, is, I have many high-performance people coming onto my show and onto my professional radar as well that talk about those early experiences of all of a sudden the bright lights and the allure and the seduction of being able to perform in these arenas. Often the human condition is not taken care of at all, and expectations aren't built about what it might really be like, and also what is the end point. And I know, well, the reason that you get up on a stage just about every day and talk about your experience is because it didn't work out how you imagined it.
No, it didn't. It, my interpretation of living was always, as still is today, is for everybody else. I try to sort of, even with my footy, it's all about how can I make you better. But now I've come to more of an understanding, okay, I need to make myself better, or I need to impact myself in that positive direction so I can actually have that impact on the other people's lives.
But if we could go back to then, moving forward through your story, how was it feeling back then that led to the next point?
Footy was my only place that I was happy. Yeah. As sort of being at training, as I said, being at training and being on game day, it was the only place that I actually felt like I belonged. My experiences at school weren't textbook in terms of in the classroom or actually out in the play yard. But that was sort of, a lot of people experience that, when we talk about 90% of kids will go through their schooling career.
A period of turbulence.
Yeah, with some sort of challenge through that.
Did you remain in school?
Yeah. Yeah, I went right through to year 12.
Yes.
I was still a good academic. There's certain classes that the teachers would say different. It was quite funny. I had to go back to my old school and do a presentation, a couple of workshops with the kids. And one of the teachers that I used to give hell to back in the day, she didn't know that I was actually doing it. And then she was in the back of the auditorium, and I started talking, and she looked up and was like, wow. Oh. And then she came up to me afterwards. She goes, I always knew you had some troubles. I always knew there was something going on.
I thought she was going to bandwagon and go, I always knew you were going to be a superstar.
Nah, so, but those experiences come through. But, for a lot of kids, for me, it was the sport that got me through.
Yes.
And then getting home, it's a lot different these days. But
you said all you had was sport. Was that did you have friends and,
Yeah, I had certain friends. My social connections were a bit of a roller coaster experience.
Okay, because again, the focus here is around what led to the major part of your story, which is where we're going.
Yeah.
So was there anything unusual about you? Because, things like all you had was sport and you weren't doing anything else. To me, that would be...
down to interpretation, Ray. I can only say what I feel like caused it. You see what on the other side of the fence is probably a different interpretation of what. Oh,
I guess I'm just trying to see through the audience's eyes.
Yeah,
who were trying to find out what it felt like being you back then.
I feel like that my experiences at school was the fact that I through my sporting prowess at that age, that I made other people feel inferior around what they were doing. So that was then became a defence thing on their side of the fence.
So would that have been perceived as something like arrogance or...
Arrogance, showing off. I used to get called Hero Quest when I was a in high school. So, however you want to look at that, that didn't sort of sit too well.
Sounds like a video game.
Yeah, well, that's where it come from. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. So, but that was my experiences, and then I didn't deal with it at all. And then, as I said, the violence thing became a thing.
When you say you didn't deal with it, what part you didn't deal with? Did you go home and feel upset, or?
Oh, constantly. Okay. Yeah, constantly.
But most people would have thought that you were just arrogant and didn't care.
Yeah, pretty much. So didn't want to go to school because then I'd have to deal with it again all day. Then I'd go home and feel crappy
Yeah.
But then I'd be playing sport most afternoons or evenings, so it actually made me feel good again about what was going on. And, that sort of escalated for a good period of time.
It's a whole iceberg analogy again, isn't it? People could only see the tip of Lance Piccione. You couldn't really see what was going on for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, that was for a good period of time, good few years. And that sort of, once I become more comfortable in myself around my sport, not just thinking that I'm not just a footballer or I'm not, not just a sports person. I sort of held back that level of arrogance.
This is when you started playing footy?
Yeah. Sort of, when I got to sort of the end of high school.
Yes.
But I think it was more around the fact that I went to Essendon Grammar, I went to Penley Essendon Grammar, and so it was sort of all boys up till year 10. So then we went co-ed year 11, year 12. So I think that was a really good thing for me.
Girls.
Yeah, well, it was. It was sort of, you didn't want to be, not just myself, but the other boys. You didn't want to be a dickhead, pretty much. So that was sort of tamed everyone back in how they're going about things, which was really good for me, and it sort of gave me a bit more concentration into my schooling. And it was pretty good. And then I had to have a lot of energies going into my footy. Because I got drafted when I was 17.
Okay.
So I was a young buck.
Yep.
Starting out, but it was the day of my year 11, year 12 English exam was the day of the draft. And then sort of, okay, well, this is what I've been working towards all this time, but the anxieties have actually, that's where my experiences with anxiety started at school.
Yes.
And that sort of escalated and got worse and worse. But
what did anxiety feel like for you back then?
What did it feel like? It was just a sense of scared. Yeah, I was scared to just be me. I talked about that belonging part before. That was the connection into why my anxiety became. But it was just that sort of gut feeling of, and the heart racing, the head spinning. And then there's the violence come into it, because that's how I acted out, and that's how I sort of expressed it, pretty much. And if you made me feel in an uncomfortable position,
watch out.
Yeah, watch out. And as I said, because I was a big fella, I'm the same size now as I was when I was 14. So, that sort of acting out for me was an easy part to do.
Yes, well, it's your protection.
Yeah, it was my protection,
and preservation.
but that caused a lot of troubles at school.
Yes.
My parents were constantly getting called up and saying, Lance has done this and Lance has done that. And but
how did they manage you through those times?
Mum was just mum. Yeah,
we don't know who mum is.
Yeah, mum was just mum, like any other mum, just made sure she had your back.
Yes.
She understood it, allowed you to sort of talk through what was going on, but, talking and being supported is only what you actually want it to be as well. This is 20 years ago, the conversations around, especially as a young boy, to talk about the crap that's going on, it wasn't had, even as much as you were encouraged to do it, it wasn't you still didn't feel comfortable actually doing it. And you can talk about things all day, but actually feeling it and actually being it is a different thing. And then, but yeah, she was amazing. But then my dad, I had a pretty rocky relationship with Dad in sort of late high school years, and then going into my AFL career, that we sort of butted heads a fair bit. But, the more I understand now is that my dad's had his own mental health challenges to a severe point for a long period of time. And they were undiagnosed for a long period of time, as most people have. But understanding where he was at, I see it now. But at that age, you don't see it. You just think Dad's been Yeah.
Well, it actually ties into so much of this dynamic around fatherhood, and we're going to talk about your own fatherhood later in the show. But back in that era and many, many generations before that, the expectations of men, and especially those relationships with sons, and you talk about an Eastern European father as well, so many stories about people like you having incredible relationships with their dads now, but before. These fathers who couldn't disclose their own experience of life until much later. It seems like a missed opportunity, but then I guess there was no opportunity at the time.
Yeah, no opportunity at the time, but it was... he's now getting more comfortable with sharing it as well.
Do you love that?
Yeah, I love it. I do love it. I love it. He still has extreme challenges. How does he feel about watching what you're doing?
He
loves what we do.
Yes.
Loves it. Loves it. Always talks to me about it. Always asking. Always sort of. But my dad's ability to connect to strangers is a lot better than his ability to connect to his close ones.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but he loves what we do. He's all over it. Mum's on the board of the foundation.
Yes.
He's our rock. She plays that mother figure within the foundation, and what we do is, it helps people connect to each other.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Connection is everything.
Everything.
It's proven. I mean, you don't need to do research to know that people connecting is a thing. And as much as we blah on about social media and video games and lack of connection, it's crap, because people are connecting. And if they're connecting through Facebook, it's a connection. Yeah. If they're connecting through online video games, they're connecting. So we've got to really sort of pare it back and start looking more objectively about what connection is. But I want to go back now to, whilst we've still got time, and talk about this time that led you. You talked about suicide before and your experience with that and what led to that. So by now you're playing AFL, and I guess it's everyone's question, well, people that I speak to, is what is it really, really like? What we see is what we see on television, and that's just the game. And if we're lucky, we'll see the Brownlow medal and maybe the tribunal every Monday night, where these guys are dressed up beautifully and you're looking more at the eye candy than you are at the result. Tell me.
What's it like?
Well, you can talk about what it's like or what it was like.
What it was like? What it was like? It was amazing. And there's no one person that should go into an AFL system or comes out of it and doesn't say that they had an amazing time, no matter if it was successful or not. The fact that you're playing footy, or going and training, and even going into the locker rooms. When I went to Adelaide Crows, the guy that I sat next to in the locker room was a bloke called Darren Jarman, who is one of the greatest of all time. To have that feeling of saying, I'm sitting next to this guy. Like, maybe other people are thinking that I'm the same. Not to that level, because he's a superstar and I was not quite a super or a star. But the feeling of just playing footy and actually embracing that sort of experience. The thing that you don't see is the politics and all the crap that goes with it. These days, back when I was playing, there was no social media, which was great, because I would have probably wouldn't have lasted so long if the social media world was around when I was playing footy. And the politics that are involved with footy clubs still, it's like any business. There's the favourites and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it can be seen as opportunities as well. Certain coaches that you sort of connect with more will give you more opportunities to do things. It only takes one stuff up or one thing to go wrong for you to be sort of blacklisted a little bit as well.
Yes.
We don't get along with the general manager or whatever it might be, and there's that, we talk about that connection again.
Yes.
I had some rocky relationships with at all my clubs.
Yes.
With different people within all different 3 clubs. So, but that whole time of what was supposed to be the dream, which was amazing when I look back on it now, at that time it was absolute living in desperation, because if I don't, I had a fear of, if this doesn't work, I've got nothing else to do. So that's not the right energies you need to be putting in. So that sort of took a toll on my footy and my performance, and I was sort of doing a lot of the wrong things extracurricularly, extracurricular activities, we'll say.
Partying.
Yep. Doing the wrong things and not putting the performance that I needed to into myself.
What are the wrong things?
Oh, drinking, smoking, doing all that sort of stuff that wasn't staying out till 5, 6 a.m. It's nothing that...
Do you think that's a culture thing within footy or a...
No.
I had Tim Watson on the show a couple of years ago, and you can talk about heroes like he's my legend.
Yeah.
And he was at a different club at a different time. We're talking about 80s, early 90s, and he describes, and his cohort group were people like Simon Madden and the Danaher brothers, and how they all were pretty protective of each other and didn't kind of so much get into that that piece. He said others did, but back then, and I'm not being judgmental, but those guys also had jobs. It wasn't all, like you just mentioned, that one of your biggest fears was, if this doesn't work, what else have I got?
Where else am I going? I talk a lot now around you attack adversity through diversity, doing different things, and it allows you to connect into when those challenges face your life, that you got something different way of going about it, or different connection to make sure that the other thing actually works out all right. The guys that were having in the old days having to have a job, or whether it be education, whatever it is, there's such a concentration these days to that. That's what you're doing. You're playing footy, it's full time, but your average AFL career goes for 2.5 years.
Well, but not every AFL footballer ends up at the point that you did. So what was it about your experience that sent you to the brink?
I think going away from my family, getting drafted to Adelaide was huge. It was what I thought was, this is amazing, they just won the flag. What an amazing experience. I'm on an AFL list. It's all going to happen. But I felt empty at the same time because I was leaving my family. And my family is the reason why I was able to get through my schooling years, and reason why I was able to get through and still is today. So that disconnection, even though the family are around and they're only a phone call away, but that disconnection of actual human contact for me was the missing piece. And I said the drink. I never didn't drink until I got to Adelaide. And I started drinking and doing all those certain things that sort of, you talk about the experiences of...
Don't you talk to me about certain things? You tell me what they are.
Certain things? No. It was just, during the week, during the week, and, as I said, thinking that you're somebody that you're not. That was, for me, that I thought I was, I was hanging around your superstars at Adelaide, and thinking that I was one of them, but I was actually a nobody. And I didn't sort of put those hard work and the efforts that I needed to put into myself as a footballer until it was too late.
Because others similar to you that I've spoken to also talk about the element of crime that's involved in extracurricular activities in the AFL too.
Yeah, no, not for me.
Yeah.
No, not in my world. No, not in my world.
I like the really big stories, Lance. Okay, we're going to a break now. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
sorry
but it is a thing though as well.
It is, yeah, definitely. But you are, as an AFL footballer or any sort of professional sports person, people want to connect into you whether they are good or bad. Yeah.
Yes.
And they do it to feel their soul, feel like, and then they can
by association.
Yeah, by association. So, I was hanging around some pretty wrong people, but they were at that age. Like as I said, when I got drafted to Adelaide, I was 17 years of age, and I got filled up with, such adulation from people that, in the essence, when challenges were going to hit, they weren't going to be there. But you don't see that at that age, and you don't see that sort of going through. So. But going through, playing, it was, then I wasn't playing. I was used to being a high performer as a junior, and then going to AFL, and I played 4 games in my first 2 years of being in Adelaide, and that was just like, why? What's happened? And having to deal with the adversity around that and the challenge of what that was. For me, I didn't understand how to deal with it because I actually hadn't been challenged in a sporting arena up until that stage.
Okay.
But, I knuckled down, put the work in, and I come back to Hawthorn, go the Hawks. I'm the reason why they're the most successful club over the last 10 years.
You are.
Because I left. So that's, but I knuckled down and put the work in, and and the rewards were coming. But then I sort of fell back into my my party ways.
Why?
There was certain things. My grandpa passed away, and I didn't deal with the grief at that stage. And I didn't deal with it at all. And it sort of really rocked me a fair bit. And I thought, okay, well, how else do I get through this? I'll start drinking again. And it wasn't during the week. It was just an absolute binge drink on the weekend and making myself an idiot. Sort of going through that way, and sort of that took its toll, and that sort of took its toll on how I was being able to perform, and then my performances were decreasing and getting injured a lot, and then I was sort of losing my connection to why I was there again, and many times over those years at Hawthorn in the final years, I thought about quitting and just I need to get away, I need to escape, and but escaping doesn't solve any problems.
Were you disclosing any of these feelings to anyone else during the time?
Yeah. I was speaking to our psychologist, our guy at Hawthorn. This is, I don't want to be here. That was my common thing, and he was able to always sort of connect me back into why, and also ease back into it. And but then I didn't actually follow through with it a lot. It was okay, the great conversation. You walk out, and then 5 minutes later, I'm back to where I was. As I said, this is
in retrospect, what would have helped you be more defined in your purpose?
That's a really hard question. I honestly don't know.
Anthony's writing that down. He's going to email it to you later to think about.
Yeah, thanks for that. I honestly don't know. Just that. I think it just sort of brought up a lot of emotions and attachment to what my life was as a kid. As a kid, said that belonging thing. I never once at AFL, through my AFL career, felt like I belonged. But had I had that ability to connect into that, I think my performance and my career would have been, instead of having that one highlights moment that you pulled from there before, it would have been a few more.
There's something that stuck with me before when you were talking about moving over to Adelaide and, probably not having recognised your family values and what they meant to you and how you'd used them in the past to manage, which goes back to my question all the way back at the start of the interview about how people managed you. And I think that's the very thing that probably almost defines you now, because your family values are so strong in your own immediate family. And also you're talking about Lee, your brother, as well, and how he puts his family together.
Yeah. I think it's experience is an amazing thing and understanding what that is. And how we utilise those. And, a guy once said to me, when I was coming out of my rocky world, he just said to me, he goes, a silly man learns from his own mistakes, but a smarter man learns from others' mistakes.
Okay.
So, it ends up you have to go through certain things that you go through to understand how it looks and how it feels. But if you can learn from how others are doing it, that's powerful. Yeah.
In my experience, you got to feel it to know it. But everyone's different.
Yeah.
But you're sort of leading closer now to the point where you felt that utter despair and not belonging and feeling alone with how you were feeling.
Yeah, I got delisted from Hawthorn when I was 24, so 2004, and then that was just like life's finished. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to turn.
Was that a shock for you?
Massive shock, because I thought I was going okay. My performances indicated that I sort of was going to go like another contract and we'll keep going. Change of coach, that whole thing. Alistair Clarkson, who's now the most successful AFL coach ever, he decided that it was best that we part ways. And I went to my car and cried for hours and hours and got home and, my dad was the first person I'd seen that day and, got into him and said what happened and, same thing, cried in his arms. And that at that moment of my life, that was a pretty strong moment that I hadn't realised until recently, that the first time I'd ever cried in front of my dad, or the first time my dad had actually cried in front of me. But I went to North Melbourne, which I was given another lifeline. Yeah, my third chance, a third opportunity to play a game, and I didn't take it. My partying got worse. The smoking, which is, to be an AFL footballer and smoke is the stupidest thing in the
Cigarettes.
world. Yeah. And then sort of influenced by certain people around certain things that just wasn't wasn't beneficial to my life. And that was sort of a bit of a waste of time. I was turning up to training. I was hiding it. Then I was turning up to training hungover. It sort of got to a real bad position that footy kept me alive because it kept me accountable to something. But suicidal ideation became a big part of my life in 2005, and that escalated for a good period of time. I spent the 1 year at North Melbourne, and then same thing. I had a conflicting relationship probably with the coach. Which is fine and something that I have to understand and have to deal with as I move forward. And then turned to partying, from the social experimentation of taking drugs and alcohol on a regular basis to actually having it as a daily issue. Became a big part of my life. And, but I was a personal trainer, which talk about oxymorons of how the life works. I was, I was doing 50, 60 sessions a week, in the city here, but sort of most days I would be sort of high on something, so which is a scary sort of thought proposition, and that sort of got to what was supposed to be a social fun thing to deep dark world of nowhere to go.
So where did that lead to?
Where did it lead to? It led me to a roof.
Yep.
I dislocated my knee in April 2011. Playing footy and going back to the world that I love, and it got me to a position to say, okay, well, the complications from that led to me, okay, well, I don't know where to go anymore. The thing that attached me to what I was and was my physical experiences, we'll say, that led me to the desperation to think I was not worthy of this life anymore. Which is a real hard thought proposition, and I was surrounded by from now I'm surrounded by the most beautiful lady in the world. It was my wife, and she was there at that time of desperation, and led me to a roof one day after no one was around, and okay, well, this is it. I can't do this anymore. I can't be a burden to anybody else in this life, and I'm sick of actually causing the pain to other people, but. Luckily, I sort of got off, and
what was the point that you decided to another option?
I hadn't slept for a few days. I think it was I actually had some hallucinations around. I think I was having some hallucinations around what my life should have been. I was looking back on the footy, looking back at high school, all that sort of stuff. But the hallucinations were of what my life could be, and that was family, and I had pictures of. Having kids, I had that sort of thought process coming through, and I thought, well, this is the one thing that got me back, and that was. And I talk about the 3 inches from death, but the 3 steps to recovery, and that sort of come back through the awareness of who I am, acknowledging what I got to do about it, and then,
so that was a moment in time,
that
you were about to jump, and then you didn't.
Yeah, so which is a pretty scary thought, and I still think about it every single day.
Yes, and not uncommon, given the suicide rate. Of men in particular, of every minute of every day in the world, another man kills himself.
Yeah. And
for that, another 20 are trying. And here in Australia, of the 8 suicides that we know of every day here, 6 of those are men, and the amount of men that have your experience that come very close. So it's really worth considering, whilst we're telling this story, that what are we really looking for when people are approaching that point where they may necessarily not have that opportunity to make a different choice. So looking for those signs and symptoms of some of what you're describing, the helplessness and the hopelessness and the big changes in life, like losing your career or losing your job, the way that we approach that is very, very important to understand what a person might be feeling like.
Yeah, definitely. I think for the male perspective, and even female, is the identity part. When you as a male myself, I understand that a little dent in my identity, it's actually a crater. But we take such a hit, and our pride, our pride and our ability takes a hit, it's actually magnified or multiplied,
amplified, yes,
sort of thing. So much more. So, there's the pressures, the expectations, the financials, the families, the socials, the work, the whatever it is.
Yes.
As you said, from the 8 that suicide every day in Australia, there's another 170 to 180 that attempt.
That we know of, yes.
That we know of, so which is scary.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to note that most male suicides in particular have nothing to do with a mental health condition as well. The things that you've just described around situational crisis, loss of job, loss of relationship, especially when men are isolated from their children through relationship breakdown, is probably one of the biggest contributors to male suicide. So, it's again worth considering how we manage through those situations and how vulnerable people become. So thank you for sharing your story. It's again, people listening in, I'm sure, have different ways of interpreting and being able to take that information and processing it in their own way, but which leads us all the way back to love me, love you, and the evolution and how the messaging and how the stories are impacting and making that difference. And you also mentioned your beautiful wife, Emma, and your 2 gorgeous little boys who do look like little carbon copies of you with their shock of white hair.
I'm lucky.
What is it like being a dad?
I love it. I love it. It's, you have that it's an overwhelming feeling of joy. I embrace the joy that comes from. There's a lot of frustrations and challenges that come with being a dad.
2 boys?
There should be. But my boys are the reason why I get up every day.
How old are they?
3 and 1. I tear up when I talk about my boys a lot because, I always think back to the fact that 7 years ago I nearly wrote my final chapter. But I'm coming up to 5 years married now, which lucky for my wife that she's lasted 5 years. No. But I'm nearly 5 years married, and I've got 2 boys that are just the most amazing little dudes in the world. For me, this is the thing. Everyone says, they're the most amazing, but for me they are. And that's what matters. My 3-year-old Alexander, who's a little champion, who's the most creatively imaginative kid in the world, and my 1-year-old, who's an absolute little machine and loves nothing but to play with balls. So the 2 different kids that come from it at this age. But I love it. I love going to the park. I love, just hanging out. I love playing trains. I love dinosaurs. We run around the house pretending to be dinosaurs. For me, that brings back a lot of joy because it brings back the simplicity of what life's about. We've become so we've become so in tune with actually complicating our lives through these different experiences, which for me is when the anxiety starts again.
Yes.
Through that complication.
When you watch your little one, and we're friends on Facebook, so what you're describing now is absolutely real, because I see you post a lot on Facebook, which is beautiful. But your little one and the ball, you're right. He's unnaturally natural.
All over it, yeah. Yes. So he started walking when he was 9 months.
But and we would have time to go into a whole nother show for this, but my question, I guess, is, in retrospect, if he does go down that path similar to you with that fascination with a ball, how are you, in a short sentence, going to manage that differently? Just
be there. You help guide them through their understanding of what they want to do. And if he wants to play sport, good. If he doesn't, we'll work it through.
But knowing what you know about, say, the environment of, say, if he goes down the path of professional sport or, how will you help him manage better in those environments? I
think just be there. Help him understand, because at the same time, when he goes probably into the professional sports world, it's going to be in 18 years' time.
Yes.
Compared to when I was in it, so that it's going to be sort of good, nearly 35, 40 years difference between him playing and me playing.
True.
So, the evolution of the world in terms of the professional sports world and even the normal society is going to be a lot different when he's an adult from when I was an adult.
Yes.
Or younger adult. Yeah.
Well, different. Everything's different.
But just be there. I think it's just showing him that unequivocal love and support to make sure that he can make his decisions and allow him to understand that he can fall, because they don't understand how to fall. They don't understand how to get back up.
Well, that's right. You know, given my hindsight and wisdom and foresight as well, you know, now the proud owner of a 24-year-old, a 21-year-old and a 10-year-old, you can't always be there for them. But you, like what you're describing about your dad, you know, your dad actually had your back in a way that he was always present, even if he wasn't physically there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the feeling that you can give your children when you can't be there, and protect them from everything. However, if you set them up to be resilient and, you know, have experiences of life, it's something a little bit different. Now, before we go, you've got March with Me coming up in March. Why should people? Apart from the fact that I'm going to be there,
shouldn't you be there?
I will be marching
that's
along.
The question. Why shouldn't you be there? So, from what came from 5 years ago from the Sydney to Melbourne walk, it's about it's March 24th. So people can do a 60k, 30k, 15k, or a 5k family walk, and it's about that bonding experience that people. And our big thing is that no one travels their journey alone. You will bond with people on a level because of their attachment into the cause. Even if you haven't experienced a mental health challenge, you know somebody in your life that has. Some people do it for closure or in remembrance of people that have suicided. We get a lot that do that, which is, you know, pretty emotionally powerful in how that works. The bonding experience of talking to people and having the amount of stories that are shared along the way is so unbelievable, and that's what makes me feel amazing about doing it. Amazing about providing that opportunity for people to engage in. You know, then even looking at the people doing the 60Ks, it's a challenge.
How long does that take the average bear?
The average bear will take about 8.5 to 10.5 hours to do 60Ks.
What's your recommendation there? Get new runners or wear the old ones? Or have a few pairs?
Have a few pairs. And it's the same thing when we talk about with anything. It's just whatever works for you, works for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, you got to get on the website at lovemeloveyou.org.au. All the information's in there. Get yourself gather your crew. We talk about gathering your crew a lot. You know, it's, you know, to do the walk by yourself, it's quite a challenge. But if you are going to sign up by yourself, you know, you're going to have 1,000 other people.
Well, Elvis Presley said it very well. You'll never walk alone.
No, and
as long as you got your crew. He didn't say that. But you know, he's not here to contest me. So
exactly.
Now, also, we love feedback on the show, so anyone that a few people have texted in already, I know, and unfortunately we can't get to those questions today, but if you do have some for Lance or for me or for Anthony, please give us some feedback. You can contact me on my email at rae.bonney@3wbc.org.au. Go to Presenting Rae Bonney on Facebook, or even Rae Bonney. You'll find me anywhere. You just Google me and
just Google it.
Something will pop up. John Farmer, our station manager, is always thrilled to take calls about my show, about all the swearing and things that go on. Give him a call, 039 285 4846. Now, have a few questions for you here, Lance, before, well, actually one. We pissed off that you couldn't crack the 30 goals because you kicked 27.
I'm an assist guy. I'm talking about always helping other people.
Right, and you just kind of fell short of 100 games as well.
Yeah, 77.
Yeah.
The most I think played in 1 year was 15, which was... yeah, it was all sorts of things, but, you know, I don't get my father-son rule doesn't apply for me, which is a sad thing for the boys, but they'll be right.
Now, I want to talk a little bit also about an event that is previous to yours or prior to yours on the 18th of March. We have been yakking on a lot about my son, George, who turned 21 today. He's officially, in fact, he's about 10 minutes into being officially 21. He was born at 11:37 a.m. by caesarean section at Box Hill Hospital. And he is a bit of a world unto his own. George is a chef. He was in Junior MasterChef when he was a little boy in the competition, and then he was very fortunate that he's also a very good connector and relationship builder. And so George Columbaris took him on, and he did his apprenticeship with George. Big shout out to George Columbaris, because he is a fantastic employer. I don't care what the media says or anyone else says about his accounting systems. I feel very fortunate.
There's a glitch in the system.
I don't care. Great first boss for your child to have, teaching values, commitment, passion, all of those things that you cannot learn in university anyway. So my George now runs his own charity event called Eat the Issue, and it's around raising awareness for mental health within the hospitality industry, which is a world unto its own. I would like to put a disclaimer in here. He doesn't use me at all. I don't help him at all with this. This is completely his own initiative. So on the 18th of March, between 6 and 10:30 p.m, tickets are on sale now. He's teaming up with Peaches, which is a rooftop bar for a night of drinks and snacks. And Eat the Issue is his initiative, which aims to raise awareness and destigmatise mental health within the hospitality industry. And he hosts regular events where they bring together like-minded people to discuss the way the industry views and approaches mental health-related issues in their industry. So he raises money for an organisation called Heat Training, and they're Melbourne City Mission administered. They administer the HEAT program, hospitality, employment and education, that stands for. And it's a practical way to engage with young hospitality workers from the ages of 16 to 25 for underprivileged children. So it's a bloody fantastic cause that he raises money for. It's a really cool event. Who's cooking? I know George Columbaris is actually going to be there. Matt Stone from Oak Ridge Wines, he's the executive chef out there. He'll be waiting on tables and cooking. Aaron Brody from Oak Ridge as well. Zach First from Ides. We've got Lauren Eldridge from Stokehouse. Jake Williams from Pope Joan, who's a fantastic guy, and Tom Peasnell from Peaches as well. They're all going to be cooking on the night, donating their time to George and Eat the Issue. So if you can, I forgot about Adam Goldblatt as well from Peaches. Get down there. We're all doing something, aren't we?
Amazing. That's the thing, is just creating those opportunities for people to engage in it.
Yes.
You know, you want to have these conversations as much as you possibly can, and there's different ways of doing it. Like I said, last night I was in an event which was a Love Me, Love You speed networking event. So it was a networking for singles event. You know, and it was a... So
when you say speed networking, was this professional or was it speed dating?
Combo. Oh, yeah, combo.
Didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, well, either did I.
Why wasn't I there?
Until last night. So it was, you know, different opportunities for different people. You know, no one experience. People are going to walk away, you know, from that same experience with different interpretations and what they did. But you just got to create those opportunities for people to be able to do it. Did
you see anyone hook up? Match up?
No. Keep it above board. No. I think there was a bit of love floating around, but I left before before it all sort of got to that point.
Of course, because these days you're straight home, straight
to the couch with a block of chocolate last night. I was it was nice. So
what's your poison?
Oh, what's not?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So top deck's usually my way to go. But you know, it's weekends. You know, I allow myself those treats because during the week and on weekend, I train a hell of a lot. You know, sort of 4 or 5 mornings I wake up. I'm up at 4 in the morning.
I was going to say, what time do you get up to be able to be up? Because I know boys typically get up around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning.
No, up at 4 in the morning and get to the gym, and so I can be home in time for when my little boys wake up. Which is usually about sort of 6:30 to 7 o'clock, so it's nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you right now that with children, there comes a time where you can't get them out of bed.
Yes, this is what I've heard.
And then it swings and roundabouts. It all comes back.
Yep.
Now, up next, I can't see on the monitor who's in Studio 1, but Paula Hogg should be there. And she'll be rolling out an entire lazy Sunday afternoon of music and a bit of banter as well. It's bound to get you completely relaxed. Get out there, buy your block of Top Deck. Lance's suggestion. And kick back. We can't see here in Studio 2 what the weather's like, but yesterday we were back to winter.
Back to winter. Put the woolies on. I think it's a beautiful day today.
Yes. Well, I did have we call at our house the fire on yesterday. My daughter Rose, she came in after playing her first game of netball back this year. She had an injury where she did her ACL.
Oh no!
So she's a pretty avid sports person as well, and so she gets really affected when she can't play.
Yep.
Because she's very, very sporty, and it really affects her mental health. So
yeah, definitely.
She'll override any injury and any pain just to get out there and feel mentally better.
But you got to understand that certain times you can't do, but you find something else to get it done,
really? Just do it.
Nah, get it
just
done.
Do it.
Yeah. Embrace that when you're a little bit older and you're feeling all those creaks and all the little pains that come through.
Speaking of which, if anyone has experienced any feelings of discomfort or managing their feelings during our show, we have talked about some fairly significant experiences. Don't forget, Lifeline is there. The number is 131114. Suicide callback service is amazing. They're on 1300 659 467. And of course, emergency services are 000. You don't, they're there to be spoken to. All three of those plus more. Now, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Rae. Thanks for having me.
It's quite emotional.
Yeah, it is. But if you're not emotional about this subject,
yes,
I'm not sure where you're at.
Well, I will. I'm going to go now and put together the trimmings for a 21st birthday, which involves a photo of George, which is one of those school photos that no parent ever really wants to see. So I'm making him a card out of it. He was taken in about year 7, and I took it to the counter at Officeworks to get printed, and it came up on the screen, and straight away I had this parent shame, and I'm saying to the girl, look, he looks really great now, and she's just laughing her head off going, oh, school photos, aren't they terrible? But on that, it was an absolute thrill to have you on the show. I'll be back at 10:30 on Sunday the 10th of March, and my guest will be a big surprise for everyone, including me. But until then, remember, it really is okay to not be okay. And just ask that question, what does it feel like being you today? Could save a life. See you later.
Cheers.